I'm so excited about this series called The Way that we're right about to embark on this journey of following Jesus. The title of my message today is stop believing and start following. I remember when I was younger, there was a day that I made a decision to follow Jesus. I remember when I was in high school and we had a Bible study at my friend Jared's house, and we saw people, young people from everywhere say yes to not only believing in Jesus but also following him. And I think there's a difference, and I think there's a profound difference between believing and following. And I think there's a reason why he doesn't just say, believe in me. He calls us to be followers of him. He calls us to live our lives as disciples, as people that are shaped by his life. And it's interesting, in Scripture, there's all these different moments that we see in the Bible, and one of the things that is really noticed is that many people believe in Jesus, but never followed him. When I was in high school, there was this a kid who was super kind. We were both in theology, and he studied, and I remember he was like the believer kid. Like I went to Oral Roberts University, so it was a Christian school, but there was still one guy who was still trying to get everybody saved. You ever seen that person? That's everywhere they go, even in the church, they're trying to get people who are in theology departments to say yes to Jesus. And so I remember even one time we had to do this special talent thing where I had a teacher who gave everybody extra credit who had a special talent. And so some people danced and some people sang good. Some people even sang bad. It was everyone was doing this talent show, and he had a talent, and so he signed up. And I never forget this. I got to give him credit for doing this because it was he definitely had guts. He tried to give an altar call as his special talent, and I remember he tried to give this big altar call, and nobody came up, obviously, because it was like a seminary, so everyone's there to be pastors. And I remember the professor followed him up, and the kid sat down, and I remember my professor said, the key to being a great public speaker is always leaving the audience wanting more. And I thought it was such a kind of a fun way of him, I think, mentoring this kid. I just remember that he was so focused on belief. He was always asking everybody, do they believe in Jesus? And so I think belief's important. I think belief is important. But I also think it's interesting that in the Bible, there's all these people that believe in Jesus but choose not to follow him. This is interesting. There's an amazing story in the Bible where Jesus is resurrected. He's literally resurrected body of Jesus. And he's engaging with his followers before the ascension. And there's a line that says that all saw, but some still doubted. So that's an interesting idea that even when Jesus was resurrected, there were people that believed in his resurrection. I mean, they had to believe unless they were blind. He was literally there with them. And so they saw Jesus. They had heard him preach. They had heard of his crucifixion. They had even been there when he was resurrected. They had saw the resurrected body. They had touched the resurrected body. But yet some doubted. And so I think that there's something unique about Christianity that to really experience the reality of the cross, there's a decision that we have to make as people of faith to go all in, to be a follower, to be a disciple, to just say, hey, I don't want to settle for just seeing the resurrected Jesus. I want him to change my life. I don't want to just settle for knowing that he's resurrected. I want him I want to know him intimately. I don't want to just know a lot of facts about him. But I want Jesus to live in me. I think there's something really unique about this reality. And so point number one today is believers watch, followers walk. Belief only requires agreement. Following requires movement. Matthew 4:18 says this, as Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, and he says, come, follow me, Jesus said. The Greek word for follow in this sense literally means to walk the same road. So when Jesus finds his disciples, he doesn't just say, believe in me. He doesn't just say, agree with me. I feel like we live in a culture today where we live in like an agreement culture. Who's like felt that the last few years? Like whether it's politics or culture, it's like culture has been in the business the last 5 years of litmus testing people on what they think, what they believe, who they should be voting for, who they shouldn't be voting for. It's always like we've been an interesting culture where we've been focusing on belief a lot. And so I was at a dinner recently, and someone said something to another person, and I remember the person in the corner goes, what do you mean, you don't believe this? And it got real awkward. Has that ever happened to you? It was like 4 minutes of just like awkward silence. And then my wife said, what'd you do? I said, I didn't do anything. I just sat there in awkwardness, and I just watched these two people be awkward about it because they like disagreed, and they couldn't like get past their own disagreement. And so I think it's interesting that when Jesus meets the two brothers, he says, follow me. Walk the same road as me. Another way of saying that is that Jesus is asking us to be on a journey. He's asking us to get up and get out. He's asking us to move. He's asking us to be a companion in his journey. He's saying, walk the same road. And so it's interesting, rabbis at this time would choose their disciples very carefully. And this was a thing. You had a rabbi, and so what would happen was people local in the town, people interested in following the rabbi, they would study and they would present themselves, and then the rabbis would choose who they wanted to disciple. And so Jesus is doing something interesting when he chooses his disciples. Is he chooses fishermen, he chooses a tax collector, he chooses all these different people. And that says something about who Jesus is calling and who he's asking to follow him. And so Jesus, he asked the brothers, he said, follow me. Another way of saying it is, again, be a companion. I want a relationship with you. Don't just settle for watching. Say yes to walking. Say yes to getting in on your faith, on seeing what God has for you in this season of how God can use you in your family. The prayers that God is calling you to pray. The people that God is calling you to be ministers to. The position that you're supposed to take as a person of God in the world. Man, there's nothing like someone who knows their position. You know, as someone who's, in his 30s, I meet a lot of younger folks and a lot of young men, and there's such a difference. If I could just take a detour for a second. There's such a difference between men that know who they are and young men that don't know who they are. This is interesting because I talk to a lot of young men. And so a person that doesn't know who they are, they don't take any agency. They're just kind of waiting for something to happen. They're just kind of waiting. They're waiting to get hired. They're waiting to get noticed. They're waiting for someone to give them a compliment. They're waiting for a door to open. They're waiting for God to say something. They're always waiting. When you don't know who you are yet, you're always waiting. But when you meet someone who knows who they are, they take authority. They take authority. You know, when I go to a restaurant with my mother, and I get there a little bit earlier, I do not choose where we sit. Because there's a 99.999999% chance she gonna move us. Because there's a vent that is not right. It's blowing in a direction. There's like a person that talks real loud in the corner. Maybe there's a draft. We're too close to the restroom. Like the conditions gotta be perfect. And so I know that. And so we were out not too long ago, and the host said, your table's ready. And I said, no, it isn't. It really isn't. It really is not. I hear you. I know you're new. We go here a lot. We know all the managers by name. You're clearly new. It says Paige Junaeus. We're at the Chop House. I promise you, our table is not ready. Just got to give her, just give us 5 minutes. She'll come and give you need I'm just telling you now, you need like 3 options. I hear you. I get it, but I'm very skeptical that she's going to agree to sit in that corner over there. When you see someone with authority, they take agency. They know who they are. They don't wait. They move. They act. And so I love this when Jesus meets the disciples, these 2 brothers besides the Sea of Galilee. And he says, follow me. What he's saying is that I have called you to be a person of God. I have called you as the place that I'm going to live and call home. I have called you, the person in your family, to transform. I'm asking you to follow. I'm asking you to walk the same road that I walk. And so this is point number 2, the difference between a believer and a follower. Believers have information. Followers have transformation. Believers have information. There's plenty of people have information today. You know, I was talking to someone recently because, I got my degree in history, and so we were talking about just the iPhone, and they said something like, oh my gosh, like there's so much information on the iPhone. And I said, it's actually wild if you think about the fact that in medieval Europe, in the 10th century, the largest library in England was 400 books. That's like crazy to think about. Like that's smaller than my Kindle app. And that was like, that this is interesting, in year 1000, 90% of priests in Europe could not read. That most churches in Europe didn't even have a Bible. That the priests knew just enough to give communion, to do the liturgy, because the cost of education was so high. The cost of producing manuscripts was so expensive because we didn't have a printing press yet. The Gutenberg press wasn't invented, so people had to do it by hand. Isn't that interesting? And so when you think about like the average Christian, like I talked to someone the other day and they said, I don't feel like I'm educated in the Bible. And I said, I hear you. But if you consider the fact that 90% of priests in the medieval ages couldn't read, you're real educated. Your opportunity to get educated is so high. Your opportunity to say yes to Jesus is so different. And so I think believers have information. We live in an age where we have more information than ever. But followers have transformation. James 2:19 says this, you believe that there was one God. Good. Even the demons believe that and shudder. You know, it's an interesting idea that James says this, that he literally says this, that even the spiritual forces of darkness in this world are Orthodox Christians. That even they know that orthodoxy is true, that Jesus resurrected, that God says who he says he is, that he's redeeming all creation, that Jesus went to hell and took the keys from the devil. He's making all things new. Even the forces of darkness. And they know more than anybody because they were defeated in the cross. And so I love James. He's saying, you believe that there is one God. Good. Good for you. You can literally hear him saying this. Could you imagine him? Like this was his, because, we read through translations. Like, I'm sure if there was an Instagram, he probably would have said, like, good for you. Like, good for you people who, like, believe that Jesus is who he says he is. But he's calling us to be followers of Jesus. To say yes to opening up your heart. I think sometimes as people of faith, as someone who's been raised in the faith, I grew up in the faith, my parents were Christian, and so I grew up Christian. I think sometimes it's easy to develop this behavior as in we've seen it all. Yeah, we've been to church for 20 years. Yeah, we used to be active. Yeah, my husband and I, we used to give. Yeah, we have seen it all. Yeah, we know the creed. We know the state. We're good. And I think what happens when we do that is we stop God from his desire to do something new. And I think we do it by accident. I think we do it as just human beings. We assume that the past is going to be the future. And so we put labels on ourselves, and we build fences around ourselves, and we limit ourselves, and we get comfortable, and we believe in this God who's making all things new, and we believe in this resurrected power that's bringing healing and restoration and new life, and it's like we're sitting there and we're like, oh, that's so great. Anyway, so where are we going to lunch next week, or maybe? And it's like James is trying to get us out of our funk and saying, guys, this is Jesus God is the living God. His Spirit is alive. There's a great professor I love. His name's Jürgen Moltmann. He's actually Lutheran, and he says this is one of the most powerful lines I've ever heard. He says, the ultimate enemy of the church is nostalgia. It's interesting. He says the ultimate enemy of the church. You could have, if I guarantee you, I gave you an index card and I just said, finish this sentence. Ultimate enemy of the church is. I'm sure I'd get the devil, demons, right? Darkness, the world, right? But he says nostalgia. And the reason why he says that is because he's saying that God is a God of the new. God is a God of the new. He's a God of love. He's a God that takes old things and makes them new. He takes old wineskins and does something new. God is a God of adventure. He calls all who say yes to him to follow him. That's a divine adventure. God is a God of authority. God is interested in doing things and building things and becoming things and seeing people step up and be the transformation in their life and in the lives of people around them. And so I think that's such an interesting idea, that nostalgia is the love of the past. It's the settling for what was. It's the I had my moment. I had my season. We saw great things. And so what he's saying is that God is the God of the new. He is always doing something new. God breathes new life into a marriage. He breathes new calling into someone who's an empty nester. He breathes vision into a young person. He breathes life into a church. That's what God does. That's the thing. Believers have information. We have so many people have information about this God. But followers, they get the benefit of the transformation. They get to experience the new. Who's learning something? Yeah. And so I want to, point number 3, it's like believers visit the house, followers will move in. John 14:23 says, Jesus replied, and anyone who loves me will obey my teaching. My Father will love them, and he will come to them and make our home with them. And so I think that believing in Jesus and the resurrected Christ is like it's like being given a key to an amazing new home, which is faith. And the thing about a house is that house brings new life. We just got a new place recently, my wife and I, and so which is great. And we're moving in at the end of the month, and it was so fun taking a tour because we got to tour all these houses. Who's ever toured homes before? Isn't it interesting? You fall in love with the home before you even know it's available. Has that ever happened to you? Like, I was joking around with my wife. Like, we the first time we saw, we had our lives painted all over that house, right? And we were in love with it. And the next day, we walked in front of it, and we're talking about our lives. And then we got the lease and dealt with a weird property manager. And we were like, yeah, that's not our home. I don't know what that is. I think the Lord is speaking to us. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is, honey, but I just feel a divine shift. Who's ever said it just shifted on me? I love when women say that when they're dating a guy, and it's like, how's it going? I felt a divine shift. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was the cargo shorts. I don't know, but there was a shift. It was divine. It wasn't from man. It was from God. There was a divine shift. And then we went to the next house, and we were looking around, and it was the same thing, and we were like moved in. And Callie did this thing where she literally had a photo of the house as her iPhone background, and I was like, honey, we haven't even applied yet. like we are moved in. Thank you, Jesus, that we got that house. And I remember we were looking at it, and the thing about when you go in a house is every room you go into, it's like you paint a picture of your life. You're like, man, like we found a house with a great office. And I don't know if you know this, but I work a lot. I like work. I spend a lot of time in my office. Man, that was a great office. All I had to see was that office. Men are simple. I couldn't have cared. Later on, we discovered that the house didn't have this, the house didn't have this. That was so over my head. I was like, there's an office. They got 2 grills at this place, and they're going to let us keep both of them. Oh my gosh. The Lord is good all the time. Could you imagine the blessings on blessings on blessings? And so you paint a picture of your life. Who's ever done that? And so the thing about a home is that a home is designed for you to live in. Faith is designed for you to live. And that's what this line says, John 14. It says, my Father will love them, and we will come to them and make our home with them. And so I think so often people, it's like they get faith, and it's like they take the tour of the house, and they got these great keys, and they sign this great deal, and they're so excited, and they invite everybody over, and then they just stand in front of the house with the door open, admiring it, and going, look what God gave us. And you come back 3 years later, and they're still standing right there. It's so amazing. Oh, my God, this is incredible. And then they're wondering, it's raining, and they're like, I wonder why I'm wet. I don't know what's happening. Or people come from out of town, and they need places to stay, and it's, sorry, man, we don't got the room. We got to stay at the local Holiday Inn. And it's like, you got this house. You got this house. Jesus wants to live in you. He says he wants to make his home in you. Do you know how powerful that is as an idea? You know, before Jesus, Jews would have to travel to the temple. And traveling was much harder than today. They didn't have electricity, technology, Google, not even MapQuest. They had nothing. And so often, these families would live everywhere. They would live hundreds of miles. And then they had to travel to the temple. And then because the temple was a place where God lived. And they would go and bring their offerings, and they would wait outside. And they didn't even get to go in. They just got to be adjacent. They just got to give the offering in front of the house. That's all they got. And so when Scripture says that God lives. He's saying that God is changing his area code. He's changing his address. Because first, God lived. His presence on earth was in the temple. And then God's presence was in Jesus because Jesus was the living temple. So then everywhere Jesus went, he brought heaven and earth with him. He was the place where heaven and earth came together. He was the place where God was on earth. And then now in his people, it says that Jesus made his home in us. And so just how Jesus was the living temple, now his people is the living temple. And so now we are the place where heaven and earth meet. We are the place where the new thing happens. Where the new breath comes. I want to read this again. Father will love them, and he will come to them and make our home with them. The word home here means a permanent dwelling place. Jesus moving into your life is not a temporary visit. He's moving in. He's moving into your life. You don't believe me? Read John. Out of all the places on earth that God has decided to live, he has chosen you. He has chosen your family. He has chosen your life. He has chosen the new thing to come in your direction, whether you like it or not. God, I don't like new things. Well, tough luck. Because Jesus is the only God who ever defeated death. And now he has full authority to do something new in your life. My final point. Who's learning something today? Believers say yes once. Followers say yes daily. A believer will say yes once. And I think it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing to have your first moment where you say yes. You say yes to grace. You say yes to love. You go, God, I don't feel like I'm worthy, but I'm going to say yes to the fact that you died for me. God, I don't know what you say to me, but I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes to your grace. The moment you say that, man, it's a beautiful thing. Change your life. But it's just the first step. It's an invitation. It's like getting keys to a house you never had before. And guess what? The house that God gives you is much bigger and better than the one you've been living in. You're going to need new furniture. You're going to make fancy friends. You're going to have to cook different food. You're going to have to update your wardrobe so the neighbors don't call on you. You got to live. You got to live in that house. Ooh, it's great when you see people and they got like a new place. You could just tell. It's like a new relationship. They're running everywhere. They're at Bristol Farms. Instead of the little cart, they got the big one. I got 2 fridges, man. I got to fill this. That's how it is with faith. And when you say yes to Jesus and his life begins to transform you and his love gets in you and he starts doing new things in you. And you know, a lot of the new things God will do, you won't be able to articulate. The amount of people I've had who've come to me and said, I don't know why I'm crying. I don't know why. I don't know what it is. Every time I get in his presence, I just feel lighter. I don't know. I just feel like I got to do something. I just feel, well, yeah, that's because that's the presence of God. Man, God is in the business of new. He's constantly breaking things off of you, shifting you, healing you. He's healing you in places you didn't even know were broken because they've been dead for so long. You've learned to live without that place. You're 15 years in, and you're like, I didn't even know. I have a desire to be a leader? Where is this coming from, Pastor Stefan? Well, that's God. He's made his home in you. And he's going to move some things out. He's going to burn some things off you. And he's going to start making new. That's what a follower is. A follower of Jesus, you don't got to be perfect. You don't got to be super spiritual. You don't got to be like one of those prayer warriors that pray 84 hours a day because they are better than me. If that was a litmus test, I would have never been a pastor. But all you got to do is you just got to be willing to say yes to God's new. Ask and the door shall be open to you. Seek and you shall find. The difference between a follower and a believer is just one hand raised.
Thank you, Jesus.
It's saying, God, what do you have for me today? What do you have for me today? Who can I pray for today? What can I give to today? How can I help today? How can I encourage someone today? Luke 9:23 says this, then he said to them all, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, take up the cross, and follow me. Followers say yes every day. Man, and if you do, I promise you, there's going to be so much new in your life that you will not even know what to do with it. God will rearrange so much furniture. He will bring people in your life that you never thought you never thought your presence meant so much. That's the thing. I think we count ourselves out. I think there's a voice in our heads that say, I don't matter. Not really. I got this and I got this and I've been sick or I've done this or this happened or I got divorced. And it's like, no. God has made his home in you to do something new. And he is calling you to walk the same path as him. To discover what he has for you. I'm done speaking. Let's give the Lord a clap.